And of course, everyone's time matters, but sometimes we have to face some technical glitch, which we faced that day. So there was some technical glitch, which is now sorted it out. Okay, I welcome you all for my lecture. And here I am Dr. Stuti. I'll be giving you some new sort of, I have tried my best, as you all are already a healthcare workers. You all have I expect that you all will be having an idea that what is macronutrient or what is micronutrient. So I've divided the topic in two sessions. First session is macronutrient and second session will be micronutrient. So what happens, we have an idea, all of us will be having an idea. So I've tried my best to discuss upon the topics or mistakes or what say left out things which we never bother, which are actually important. And being a healthcare workers, we can think of adding, or we can think of managing these things as well while planning a diet chart or giving any diet consultation or nutritional consultation to anyone. So such things will be taken care of in this lecture. This is my plan, and all of your questions are already welcomed here. After the lecture or between also you can add the questions. Fine. So macro and micronutrients, before going to that, I'll be like okay. So I'll be mainly dealing with the macronutrient. Before that, you all know that what actually nutrients are. Nutrients are anything, any substance which we use to survive, any human being or any living thing which they consume in various other way for our day-to-day life survival, or for the growth or for the reproduction. Anything which is being consumed as called as nutrients. So we generally have described our nutrients in different forms. That is mainly, main category is macronutrient and micronutrient. And macronutrient, carbohydrate, protein, fat. Then we are having vitamin, mineral, and water is also added as a nutrient, essential nutrients. And if we look into the carbohydrate, and if we go for the new data given by WHO and various other organizations who works on nutrition, they are now saying that roughage or fiber as a different fiber as a different nutrient. They are trying to consider, or they are telling that reconsider or consider fiber as a different nutrient, or that will be also coming in the sector of macronutrient. Maybe in the coming future we may count fibers, roughages as macro as fourth macronutrient. Like right now we have carbohydrate, protein, fat. Right now we consider carbohydrates, sorry, roughages or fiber, dietary fibers, especially in carbohydrate. But maybe in coming futures, coming years, with some more valuable data, we would start considering as another major macronutrient. Okay, so macronutrients, they are carbohydrates, proteins, and fat. One by one we'll deal with. So what are carbohydrates? In general, if we'll say they're hydrates of carbon, if we'll go to the structural part, or they are mainly categorized into two: simple carbohydrate or complex carbohydrate, or we can say sugars or fiber, such kind of differentiation we can see. What happens in simple carbohydrate or in complex carbohydrate? So carbohydrate, they are made up of simple sugars, and simple sugars supply energy for the brain activity. And complex carbohydrate supplies, as we all know, that complex carbohydrate supplies sugar or gets converted into simple carbohydrates, which takes time by the body. There is a slow release of carbohydrate and a slow release of sugars in our body. That's why we call it complex carbohydrate, because they have more hydrates as well as carbon to get converted into simple sugar, and which takes lots of time and which gives a slow release in our body. So carbohydrate, the main function of carbohydrate is to provide energy to our body. The main most important function is, although all macromolecules, all macronutrients provides us carbohydrate, sorry, energy. Okay, all fat provides us energy, carbohydrate provides us energy, protein provides us energy. As the major role of the carbohydrate is to provide energy round the clock. Okay. So what happens when we consume too much of the carbohydrate or too little of the carbohydrate? When we eat too many carbohydrates, our body turns them into fat. If we are eating much carbohydrates, more than the required by your body, as we know, everyone's body is totally different from another. Although we are having one method to calculate the carbohydrate, but it totally depends upon the age of the person, size of the person, height, what is the height that person is carrying. So these, so requirement of the carbohydrate of an individual depends on these various factors. What if we are consuming carbohydrate more than the required amount? It generally gets stored in the form of glycogen in our body. But first, this carbohydrate get turns into the fat. And then when your body is starving, at that time, how we are surviving? We are surviving because these fat gets converted into stored energy, and that stored energy will be used for the for or during the starvation period for the survival. Okay, what happens when we consume very less carbohydrate? And if we are consuming that, storage limit of the carbohydrate is one more important thing, is that the storage limit of carbohydrate inside our body is actually very less in comparison to the carbohydrate we consume on our daily basis. Especially what happens, especially when like if we think of Indian diet. Let's leave the other international diets. If we are thinking of only and only to Indian diet, our diet is anyhow rich in carbohydrate than protein and carbohydrate than any other macronutrients. Okay, so Hmm. So, but the storage capacity is less. So that's why what body do, they get it converted into fat, and that fat is having ability to get stored in any part of the body. And then whenever required, that fat will become, will be converted into stored energy, and that stored energy will be utilized. Otherwise, it will keep storing. Okay, same thing vice versa. What happens if we are consuming less amount of carbohydrate? Less amount of carbohydrate will give lots of stress to our body. There will be a breakdown of the muscle, fat, protein, because the fat is having ability to give energy, protein is having ability to give energy to us. So what will happen if carbohydrate is less? Means the main function of carbohydrate is not happening. So will body will stop the function of carbohydrate? Of course not. If the body is not stopping the function of carbohydrate, what will happen? It will definitely, what it will do? It will definitely take help of, body will take help of another macronutrient, that is fat and protein, who are having various other duties to perform inside the body. And then this is how, if low carbohydrate one is consuming, there are chances that the person may lose weight. But if low carbohydrate and high protein is consumed, okay, and then at the same time, if high protein is not consumed, low carbohydrate is consumed, then protein will not function properly. Protein will get converted into energy. And what will happen if protein is getting converted into energy? Then the main function of protein will be hindered inside the body. And this is how there are chances that person may lose muscle, fat, and various other problems, and person may become deficient in protein as well. Okay, so these are the things which may occur if somebody is consuming too much of carbohydrate or somebody is consuming very less carbohydrate. Where do we get carbohydrates? Means what are the sources of carbohydrates? Simple carbohydrates, most of the time it's a table sugar, honey, pastries, hard candies, normally what glucose we drink. These are the simple carbohydrate which easily gets released inside other, which once we start consuming, from there, from our mouth, digestion starts. Okay, so if the digestion starts from the mouth, the carbohydrate digestion also starts from the mouth, and from there only there will be a digestion process start, and all the simple carbohydrate, whatever you are consuming, they will easily be going into our bloodstream. What are the other sources of carbohydrate or complex sources of carbohydrate? Grain products like bread, rice, pasta, vegetables, okay, dry beans, and fruits like banana, plantain. So these are the complex carbohydrate. Why they are called complex carbohydrate? Because they have a fiber in it, and what the fiber will do, fibers are non-digestible, and if they are non-digestible, what will happen, they will not allow the glucose, they will not allow the sugar to break into simpler form very easily. They takes time. That fiber will keep sugar bind it with themselves, that they'll not allow it to go into the bloodstream, so there will be slow release. So that because of that slow release, what will happen, their blood glucose level will be maintained. That's why we generally what we say that high fiber rich food should be given, or always a high fiber rich food will be having low glycemic index. Okay, so okay, so this was the introduction of carbohydrate, that what actually carbohydrate is, and what are the types of carbohydrate, what is the basic function of the carbohydrate. Now, this major point which we sometimes miss, that what is the metabolic response of carbohydrate, especially to the appetite and hunger. Like, there is a concept where we say that if we are consuming a complex carbohydrate, that will give more satiety value. Satiety means feeling of fullness, like something we consume. There are a few things which we consume and we keep consuming, like light food, we can say, fox nuts, or chips, such fried food also, we will keep eating them, will not stop. Okay, because there is no satiety value for such kind of food. But if we are consuming high protein food, or if we are consuming food with high carbohydrate or complex carbohydrate, not high carbohydrate, complex carbohydrate, what will happen? There will be a different metabolic response to the carbohydrate. Means there will be a different metabolic response by our body to the nutrient carbohydrate. Now, there is a concept called glucostatic theory. What happens in glucostatic theory? It's basically a small amount of glucose will be regulated inside our body. So a small amount of glucose will be regulated, and that, oh sorry, carbohydrate will be regulated, and that will be converted into glucose and sent into the bloodstream. We say that the food which are having more complex carbohydrate, which gives a satiety value. It is a concept on the basis of functionality, or on the basis of bioavailability of that particular food inside the body. If it is sustaining for the very long period, if it takes lots of time to the it takes lots of time to get digested in the body, it will remain for inside our body for the longer period. What will happen? It will get converted, or sorry, what will happen? It will give a long appetite. You will not feel hunger. A person is not going to feel hungry for the longer period of time. So in the glucostatic theory, what happens, theory of food intake regulation stemmed from the recognition that the body has limited capacity for the carbohydrate storage but requires constant glucose supply for the central nervous system. What happens, although if somebody is consuming complex carbohydrate or simple carbohydrate, if more simple carbohydrate will be there, it will be utilized by the body in very sooner period, and again the person will feel hungry. But at the same time, what happens if we are suggesting somebody to consume complex carbohydrate, but our central nervous system needs glucose, means simplest form of carbohydrate to be consumed, that to near about 100 gram per day. Okay, so if this much glucose is required in every short period of time, what our body do? They go for the glucostatic theory, means there will be a small regulation of carbohydrate, or there will be a small regulation of uh, sugars time to time in their body, so that glucose can be supplied to the central nervous system. Okay, at the end, I'll be talking about why I am discussing this. Because most of the time, what happens when we design, let it discuss here now, that most of the time, being a dietitian or being a health worker, what do we do? We easily say to the patient that, or specifically if somebody is diabetic or something, we very nicely we say that you consume that high fiber food. Even though, do we ever take a feedback that food which we have given to the patient, although the patient is getting relief from the other problems which was there with the patient, we take feedback for that. But for the current food, is there any differences they are feeling? Is there any other problem they are getting? We always miss that point. What happens if for a very long period there will be a lack of simple carbohydrate? Definitely person brain can will start working slowly because of low glucose supply to the body, low glucose supply to the central nervous system. So this kind of metabolic response also we should think of while designing anyone's diet. And there are two, this next paragraph, I'm not going to read it, I'm just briefing it to you, that what happens, there are two sections. First is lateral hypothalamus and second is ventromedial hypothalamus. And these two sections, first section was called as the hunger center, and then ventromedial hypothalamus was called as satiety center. Mean to say that their functioning also matters if we are providing both kind of carbohydrate from the outer source. Otherwise, person in a long run, person may have different types of, or some easily nowadays we can say that depression occurs. So depression because of long period of time, because of person is consuming that food, they'll not be able to understand that these things are happening because of food. But depression may occurs, or irritability may occurs because of less supply of glucose inside the body, not body, central nervous system. And then all these other things also matters on the glycemic index of the food. All the time we talk about that low glycemic index of food should be given, or nowadays youngsters, they have they just because they watch various other videos of this and that, so many other food bloggers or health bloggers, what happens, they will talk about one particular topic, like low glycemic foods are good, one should consume low glycemic foods, and low glycemic foods will always be better, or this will prevent you from the diabetes and various other diseases. Fine, not wrong. But what happens, is low glycemic food actually, although functionally it is hypothesized that yes, low glycemic food can reduce the appetite, but it increases the satiety at the same time. Means by consuming low glycemic food for the longer period, person will not feel the satiety. And if the satiety will not be there, what satiety? Feeling of fullness will not be there. Definitely, the brain will not be happy. You will not feel happy even though you are consuming, anyone who is consuming a modified diet or therapeutic diet or something like that. So yes, it is something like that, something which is that low glycemic food is actually really good, but it is actually very subjective now, that it reduces the hunger, but it at the same time it increases the it increases the satiety. So this is actually very what to say, uh, it is now, it has become actually very discussable topic, that the food or any GI food we are giving to the patient for the longer period, are they after very long period, are they actually or feeling good after consuming the low GI food? So such things should be taken account while giving, maybe after 3 months or 4 months, such things should be taken in account. Otherwise, what will happen, that many other problems may occur in the patient, or while designing the carbohydrates, it while designing the or planning the carbohydrate rich food, they may face some different kind of issues. Now coming to the endocrine responses of the carbohydrate, that was the metabolic responses. What happens to our endocrine response to the carbohydrate? There are strong evidences. They say that complex carbohydrate give satiety. Agree that complex carbohydrate is means uh, uh, most of the evidences, or now we have hypothesized it, that yes, complex carbohydrate will give satiety. But what is endocrine response? So there are few possibility that dietary pattern influences endocrine cell density, as well as peptide concentration in the GI tract. So what happens basically, that there will be some endocrine signaling carbohydrates which give some changes in ingestive behaviors, and because of that there will be a chance that some executive functions or frequent doses or override physiological signals will be given by the carbohydrate, which may give some changes in the endocrine responses. Although low GI foods, low carbohydrate foods will be always be beneficial, but we need to study, or we need to give a focus. Was I absent? Am I audible? Was it disconnected?
No, you're audible.
Okay, then it was showing I have joined the meeting, so I thought,
No, no, you are totally connected. Carry on, please.
okay. Wait, what happened? Okay, so few endocrine responses of the carbohydrate. So sometimes what happens, Roshan, am I audible? It is
Yes, you are audible. Yeah, you are audible.
Actually, here I'm getting a message again and again that you are disconnected, you are connected. Just a minute, huh? Fine. So I was discussing about the carbohydrates, endocrine responses to the carbohydrate. So basically, what happens that this strong evidences we are having that complex and simple carbohydrates are uh, are prompt for the secretion of gut satiety peptides, and then the exceptions would be that carbohydrates should be highly satiating and consumed in a limited portion. However, this has not been a common experience, especially when present in the beverages. So after so many of research, they say that yes, that gut satiety peptides are being secreted from the gut, and then they say that that all because of simple carbohydrate and the complex carbohydrate. But at the same time, the same has not been observed if the person or a group of people are consuming beverages. So this appears to be lie for the importance of endocrine signaling for the carbohydrate on ingestive behavior, and reasons are many, but like few reasons. Maybe there are chances that the dietary pattern influences endocrine cell density and thus peptide concentration and then concentration in the GI tract. And another factor could be that executive functions can and frequent doses or override physiological signals can also be some factors because of which there are chances that beverages cannot be or beverages or carbohydrate present in beverages cannot give that amount of satiety even though they are rich in carbohydrates. Okay, coming to the next macronutrient, that is protein. And the protein, definitely we all are made up of proteins. They are called as like, they provide a structure. And then proteins are made up of amino acids which actually works as a building blocks of the body. What happens, amino acids, they basically, your body arranges amino acid to build different types of proteins it needs. That we all know that we are having 20 different types of amino acids. Now we are having 21st as well as 22nds are in the line to be called as amino acids. And these amino acids in different groups and different forms, they make different proteins. Okay, so what are the functions of proteins? Protein helps in building muscles, blood, skin, hair, internal organs. They also helps in the body growth, repair, and protein also helps in fighting many various other diseases. Or if we'll go deep in the functions of protein, the protein is basically made up of amino acids. Different food contain different amount of combinations of amino acids. We have, like, we do limit one amino acid in rice, but at the same time that amino acid can be found in dal. And because of these, dal means pulses, so because of these combination, and then if we are consuming these combination of amino acid food, then the essential amino acids can be fulfilled from that source. And proteins are animal sources. Protein, mainly we get main protein sources are animal sources like meat, fish, and dairy products. Contains full range of essential amino acids which are actually needed by the body. And protein from plant sources, for example, pulses, cereals, they are actually they limit sometimes in few essential amino acids, so we need to consume them in a combinations. What happens if we consume too much of protein? May mean too much, if we are consuming too much of protein, it can lead to heart disease. It can trigger it can hinder the insulin production or overproduction of insulin. Anything can happen. Then there are evidences that there are some types of cancer can occur because of high amount of or consumption of too much of protein. Too much of protein can also cause loss of calcium inside the body. So protein should always be taken in amount which is required actually, and then few extra can be taken to maintain the specific dynamic action of the body. Too much of protein also leads to less carbohydrate intake, fuel to the fuel muscles. They will also are if we are eating too much of protein, what will happen? More and more energy release will be there from the protein instead of carbohydrate. But carbohydrate is having various other functions as well. So, and there will be too much pressure on our kidney. So many times we listen or we get the news that people from the gym, as they consume more protein, especially in the form of beverages, it is being observed or it is being proven that protein gets absorbed inside the body more in the form of beverages than in the form of solid state. So what happens, that's why most of the time if we'll see all the gym products which is rich in protein, they are in the powder form, and they will ask you to consume in the form of beverages, maybe in shake, juice, or in various other forms. So these proteins, if we are consuming too much, it is going to lead to poor kidney functions, or kidney have to work more than the required amount and more than its capacity. Then it will overtake the functions of carbohydrate as well. What are the sources of the protein? Obviously, I have discussed earlier as well. Animal sources, meat, poultry, fish, egg, and so on, and plant-based sources like beans, nuts, and grain products like grains and pulses, where these green gram or soybean or rajma, these are the products which are actually rich in protein. Now, although being having abundant amount of protein, is still all across the world protein deficiency is being observed all the time. So there are few researches conducted, and they have come with some novel sources of the protein. So novel sources of the protein which are actually not a dominating source of protein, or they are not being consumed in a dominance, we can say. Like beef, lamb, like beef, lamb, chicken, pork, these are consumed very easily. Every part of the world it will be consumed, and protein source can be, requirement of protein can be fulfilled. At the same time, there are various other good sources of the protein, or they are also called as a novel source of the protein, where uh, meat products from the alligator, kangaroo, ostrich, and there are many more from which a protein can be a good source, and protein can be sourced from these animals as well. Okay, this is the thing which it is not necessary that can be available all across the world. But seaweeds, so many insects, these, and then single cell proteins, they are also known as novel source of protein. These can be sourced anywhere. These can be sourced anywhere, and single cell protein can be produced anywhere. Seaweeds are like, they are processed, and they can be found easily in many other parts of the world. And then most prominent novel protein source is like insect nowadays. That insect is a kind of fly which is green in color. I was searching the picture, I couldn't get it. That insect is nowadays, there are various companies in other side of the world, they are basically using that insects and producing protein supplements. to overcome the protein. Like single cell proteins, we are having spirulina. There are many entrepreneurs from the Kerala, from Karnataka, mainly southern part of the India, who are producing spirulina in a huge amount. And spirulina has been considered as a very good source of protein. They are entrepreneurs as well as social workers, because they are providing those spirulina to anyone who is actually protein deficient, especially among the children, and they are giving results as well. So insects, seaweed, seaweeds, there are various seaweeds which are highly rich in protein, and the people who live at the coastal areas, they consume it, they are processing it, and they are selling it as novel source of protein. So it is not necessary that we should stick to few things which is considered as protein or which is considered as good source of protein. We can move to such things also, and we can during consultation or during uh, designing their diets, or telling that what to eat, what not to eat, or what are the protein sources, these things can also be popularized, especially spirulina, because earlier days spirulina was very expensive. Now, because of too many entrepreneurs in the country, spirulina's rate has dropped down drastically, and it is easy to produce. Single cell proteins are very easy to produce, that can be given easily to the Indian population. Leave the seaweed, maybe most of the time, some part of Indians may not have that acceptability to seaweed or the insect, but single cell protein like spirulina can be given very easily to them. Now, what is the coming to the metabolic response of the protein? So, both children and elderly with the compromised protein status express it's a actually it is it's a kind of research where they say that they have to consume or to take good amount of protein. They gave the preferences to soup containing casein hydroxylate compared to soup alone, despite its longer bitter taste. Okay, so what happened? These soup which additionally casein will be added, casein hydroxylates will be added to the protein, sorry, soup, and that will be that they thought to that they consumed it, although it was bitter in taste. Because why? What happened? That protein gives in casein form or casein hydroxylated form of protein do better absorption, or they were better nicely absorbed by the body, and their response was actually better. And at the same time, it is said that, like, low protein index promotes desire to eat protein containing savory foods. Mean to say that protein, sometimes if the product is rich in high protein, there'll be low hunger. So instead of consuming high carbohydrate rich food, one can go for the high protein diet also, because high protein diet reduces the hunger. Now, coming to the satiety, what happens if protein is more? The satiety will also be more. Sometimes, like, one people cannot consume too many eggs. Why? All because satiety gives satiety instantly. Okay, so satiety or appetite, or sorry, satiety can be reached easily with high quality of protein or for good amount of protein. At the same time, hunger can be reduced with the good quality of protein. Okay, and not only that, uh, protein which are protein which sorry foods which are rich in protein, they will also give a longer appetite. Mean to say that protein high protein diet will let not give you hunger or let not reach the hunger point very easily. So protein with carbohydrate play an important role, and their metabolic responses in combination are actually better in comparison to only consuming carbohydrate rich food or only consuming protein rich food. Okay, coming to the fat. Fat, very well known that anything which is having high fat will have good flavor, will have good texture, and will give you feeling of fullness also. Although it is having that taste, that sensory taste, which we'll keep eating. In comparison to protein or carbohydrate rich food, if we are eating fat food, we consume it more, and it is like, suppose you open a packet of chips, what happens? We'll keep consuming that packet of chips till it finishes. All because of texture, all because of crispiness, all because of flavor it is providing. And that's why fatty food attracts a lot in comparison to carbohydrate rich food or protein rich food. Fat, what basically it do, it promotes the healthy skin and the normal growth. Fat is a part of cellular membrane. Fat do various other functions. It protects our vital organs. It provides calorie to the body. It is having aids in absorption of fat soluble vitamins. Recommended limiting 30% of the calcium, 30% of 30% kilocalorie from the fat. Okay, so fat maximum from all the whole kilocalorie, all the calories we are consuming, out of which 30% should come from fat. We all know that fat gives 1 gram of fat gives 9 kilocalorie per gram, and then 1 gram of protein gives 4 kilocalorie, 1 gram of carbohydrate gives 4 kilocalorie, and it also provides a source of essential fatty acids. So fats is actually very important macronutrient to provide or to complete other two nutrients. Okay, so there are different types of fats: saturated fat, unsaturated fat. In saturated fat, how do we identify the saturated fat? They will generally be solid at room temperature, like ghee or vanaspati. They are solid at room temperature. And then unsaturated fat, they'll be liquid at room temperature. That's why we say that, and this is the differences between fats and oils also. Oils all the time, either it's um, uh, olive oil, mustard oil, all such oils will be liquid at room temperature, whereas saturated fat at room temperature also, they'll be highly granuled and they will be solid at room temperature. Unsaturated fat, they helps in the maintenance of healthy blood vessels as well. What happens in too much fat? Very well known, there are various, most of the disease which we can say that, especially metabolic diseases like heart disease, diabetes, hypertension, obesity, and various forms of cancer, stroke, all occurs all because of consumption of too much of fat. So the consumption is limited to 25 to 30 gram per day by an adult, normal in adult. But rare of rarest, it happens that one person consume only 25 to 30 gram of fat per day. We always exceed. There are two types of fat: the visible fat, invisible fat. Visible fat, like fats and oils, all are visible fat, but invisible fat, which is present already in all the food which we are consuming, like cereals, grains, and so on. So there are various variation in fats there, and then there are essential and non-essential fats also. I'll directly go to the sources of fat. Sources of fat: saturated source, Obviously, butter, margarine, meat fat, poultry fat, dairy products, they are the saturated sources of fat. Unsaturated sources of fat, vegetable oils, nuts, olives, avocados, and unsaturated fats are called as good fats, or we can say good source of fats, because they do not give, even though it is being consumed in more than normal limit, they will not be giving adverse effect to the body in comparison to saturated fats. Okay, what is the metabolic preference of the fat? Fat preferably positively correlates with the person body fat. As much fat we are consuming, it will, most of the time, it will be correlating with the body fat as well. If the person is consuming more and more fat in their diet, definitely the body fat consumption, most of the time, it will be higher as per their consumptions. And suggest the, because fat, more fat, why do we consume fat? Just to give taste. In normally, if fat doesn't give any taste, definitely nobody will have that liking to consume more fat. All the palatability comes from this macronutrients, and which contributes to the overconsumption. Overall, high palatability and availability of dietary fat seems to be sufficient to the prompt food intake without eliciting a precise reduction of portion size through its satiety and satiation properties. So this is what happens. Fat is having less satiety value because in general, if you will think that, because we have made a tendency that no, this is a fatty food and we will consume, then it will give bad or adverse effect. But in reality, what happens, metabolic in reality, it does not give. All the fatty food or food which is rich in fats will not give satiety easily. Yes, but it can increase the appetite, or it can reduce the hunger for a time being. In comparison to carbohydrate, if somebody is consuming fat rich food, it will be little higher. Mean to say, appetite will be little longer, and then definitely if appetite is little longer, hunger will be reduced. Then coming to the endocrine responses to the fat, what happens? High fat diets are often associated with the positive energy balance and weight gain. Of course, this is being attributed to the tolerance adaptation of glycemic index response with the chronic consumption of high food. There may be certain subgroups of responders and gradation for the responsiveness with the categories without dominant pattern. Mean to say that if we'll see the endocrine response, definitely it attracts the GI response also. And if the food is rich in fat, and if the high glycemic food is being consumed, then definitely it will be giving a different endocrine response or adverse endocrine response to the body will give adverse endocrine response to the fat. And what happens, lifestyle also matters after consumption of fat. Not always the fat or in not only the endocrine response, metabolic response, even neural response also, if we will talk about all these things. In case of fat, what happens, it always triggers in case, in the sense, it always gives if there is a more carbohydrate and there is a more fat, definitely there will be more deposition of fat inside the body, because we are consuming carbohydrate. We are after consumption of more carbohydrate, it is get converted into fat. Consumption of more fat, it will also be there in the body. So definitely it is going to create a imbalance from endocrine end also. Not only endocrine end, if we will see the neural responses of the fat, there also same thing occurs. These these high fat is definitely going to give adverse effect. And if there is a gain in weight, all because of adverse endocrine response, adverse neural response, adverse metabolic response, they are body is going to react adversely, and then there will be a mm, imbalance between the macronutrients as well. Coming to the conclusion, I'll conclude directly that what happens in all the macronutrients, protein, carbohydrate, fat, although so many researches are going on and things are being changed, older concepts, all the concepts, older concepts, newer concepts are getting older, and older new various other concepts are arriving. So this is the high time for us to decide in a better way. Few things like we, while designing a diet, or we while counseling for the diet, few things we just miss it, that is specific dynamic action of the food. Suppose we are giving high protein food, that high protein or protein rich food will have more specific dynamic action. At the same time, if we are giving much higher food, definitely it is going to increase, protein rich food is going to increase the metabolic rate of the product also, metabolic rate of particular, or metabolism of human being. So if metabolism is increasing, person basal metabolic rate will also be increased. So this is in the case of protein. Coming to the case of carbohydrate, carbohydrate also, like we get SDA, specific dynamic action, near about 10% of the calorie will be used from the carbohydrate also. So when we are designing, sometimes we reduces the carbohydrate, but no, what happens, all because of specific dynamic action, what happens, if the requirement of carbohydrate is 100 gram, we should give them 110 gram of carbohydrate, so that 10% of that food should go for the mechanism of a specific dynamic action. At the same time, we should also think, if that is going for the specific dynamic action, definitely BMR of the person, basal metabolic rate of the person, will be maintained at this. And if same followed, same goes in the case of fat as well. Okay, if there will be high rich amount of, or good amount of fat in the diet, definitely it is going to increase the BMR. And fat also gives near about, or from fat also body takes near about 10% of the calorie for the specific dynamic action. So when we are designing a food, and especially we are keeping the things in mind, that is macronutrient, we should give nearly about overall 10% extra of all the, not 10% extra protein, 10% extra fat, or 10% extra carbohydrate, altogether 10% extra we should give to the person, or while calculating the amount of diet, even though controlling the portion size, 10% extra should be given to all the person, because of a specific dynamic action of the body. Otherwise, what happens, definitely food may bring change in instantly, but in a long run, that will also give a adverse effect to the food. Most of the time we miss that, because of which nutrient, because of which kind of combination, in a long run, the things or the changes we were getting will get stopped, and what was the reason. So these are the few reasons, because of which, or these are the few imbalances we create while maintaining the macronutrients in someone's diet. And these small portion, cutting the portion size, and arranging the food as per the nutrients, we miss few things like BMR of the person, how it will react, or what will be the how person's SDA can be maintained, and how these things should be, what kind of food should be given to the person, so that these two factors should be maintained, because these are most underrated factors, but at the same time biochemically they are highly important to the person, so that their body can utilize and properly metabolize that particular food in that period, or food, for the better results. Okay, so this was all about the macronutrients. I have not discussed few points that can be discussed if required. If you will demand, that can be like RDA, new RDA. I have not given much importance to this here, but that can be taken care of in second lecture if required, because everyone, all of us know that yes, there is a change in RDA. We can reduce the amount and we can manage the amount, but functionally somewhere, while reducing, while cutting the portion size, or while cutting the macronutrients as per the modification in diet, we forget the few things like BMR of the person, or like specific dynamic action of calorie required for the specific dynamic action. And here in long run, these things gives major result. That's why we need to take care of macronutrients, especially macronutrients. These two factors are not missed for the micronutrients, but they are highly needed during the design of macronutrients. We are during designing macronutrient food, rich foods in anyone's diet. So this was all from my side. If anyone wants to have any question, you are welcome. I think I'm connected. Am I connected? Am I connected? Participants? Roshan? Okay, so you can have a question. I think Roshan is not here. Now you can have a question.
Yeah, I'm here, Suti.
So I'm asking you, am I connected? Why you're not replying?
Oh, sorry. I haven't heard. Sorry. Yes, you are
It's
connected.
okay.
And the questions now, they're actually they're not able to speak. They will give in chat box. If they're having any questions, they will give the chat box. Check the
Okay,
chat box
fine,
for
fine.
questions.
So this is
Yes.
what I asked. Okay, I thought
Yes,
again I
yes,
have
sorry.
to reconnect. So many times actually I was getting a glitch.
Hmm.
Anyway, so
Yeah. Oh, okay. If any questions are there, yes. See some chat box, something is appearing. Just check. Huh?
something ICTS Trishur I can read. That's it. Wait. I think it's everyone's क्या बोलते हैं? Introduction it is. As it's a very common topic, nobody will have question. I have tried to make it little different, but
Yes. Any participants, if any questions are there, just please text to Stuti. Just please text in the chat box.
okay, if you are not interested, means you can mail us questions as well. Should I share my Gmail ID?
Actually, if any participant is having any query, they can mail to knrc at the rate knrc at the rate gmail dot n
Okay.
knrcnm dot yeah, that email ID. Yes,
Mm.
so, we will get back with the answers.
Okay. So no questions, participants?
Then, in case of no questions, if no questions are there, Then we will get back to you with our next session with micronutrients.
Okay.
Okay, okay,
We can end the
okay.
meeting.
Thank you so much, Dr. Stuti. Yeah, thank you so
Thank
much,
you.
Dr. Stuti.
Thank you, Rashmi.
Thank you. Some chat box, something is appearing. Some question is there.
No, just thank you.
Okay, okay, fine. Okay, thank you, thank you.
Thank you. Something is wrong.